Hello, friends. Welcome to Akul Mac Live. Everybody's talking about the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. In fact, Ukraine used to be part of Russia, and this invasion has created a sort of a crisis. If you switch on the TV, it is so much a big crisis globally. In fact, everybody's talking about it, and everybody is concerned about the well being of the Ukrainian people, which are now becoming collateral damage in this invasion. While the Russian government says that this is the best option they have because of the threat from NATO, and Ukraine wants to join NATO. But is it? Let's analyze this particular event more closely, because I believe this is just one of the steps towards achieving a new world order. What is this new world order? Let us go back in history and analyze the current world order. This current world order really emerged after the Second World War, and the war ended in 1945. And after that, most countries put together believed that there has to be a global forum where war-like situations should be avoided. I mean, if any issues are emerging between countries, they should sit across the table, solve those issues, and move on so that they can avoid the war. And with that intention, United Nations were formed in the late 40s, early 50s, and so far United Nations have played a major role in ensuring that there is no global calamity. In fact, if there are any calamities, United Nations plays a very vital role of bringing everybody together on the same table, handle situation together. So this is the current world order. It has worked for last 60-70 years, but lately a lot of leaders have expressed their desire that United Nations is no longer as strong or as relevant a body which it should be, and a lot of countries are now not following what UN is asking them to do. The allegation is that the United Nations sometimes also get biased towards certain lobby. So if United Nations is a body which is supposed to take care of global issues, there is no question of bias, and because of that, United Nations is now being looked at as something which was required then, but as the world progressing and moving towards 21st century, 22nd century, as the advancements are happening, as the space race is brewing, many countries and many leaders believe there is a new requirement, or maybe United Nations is required in a new format. Let us look at the Ukraine crisis more closely. Why this Ukraine crisis is happening? It is because the Ukraine wanted to join NATO, and Poland has already joined NATO. And if you remember, after United Nations, there were two major military powers which emerged. One was NATO, other was Warsaw. Warsaw saw irrelevance after the breakdown of USSR, and surprisingly, all these countries that are fighting, which is Russia and Ukraine, Poland, and all those, they were part of the Warsaw side of military alliances. And this is exactly what the Russian is saying, that they don't want NATO to be so close to their boundaries. And they have been saying that Poland has already joined NATO, all the Eastern Bloc countries have joined NATO, and now Ukraine has been ethnically same as Russian. I mean, if you look at the history of Ukraine, it is very similar to history of Russia. In fact, there are same people on both sides. As an Indian, if you want to compare Ukraine and Russia, they can pretty much be compared India and Pakistan. So same people divided by a nation's boundary, and Russia has already told them not to join NATO, and the president of Ukraine has been played around by the Western forces, and because of this war is happening. And you know that no Western power is helping Ukraine fight this battle. This itself exposes the hypocrisy of this war itself. because Ukraine went to war with Russia thinking that his future NATO alliances will help him overcome this threat, but none of them have actually helped him, and this has created a crisis for the people because the politicians have gone underground, where the people on the street are fighting and probably dying because of this. The lack of water, lack of resources, lack of provisions, all of that is affecting the common people of Ukraine because of this. And also, Russians soldiers are also dying in this whole process. So I think we have to look at this in a different perspective where this war is desired by people. Look at this way, if there was sanity, this war is not required. But since there is no sanity and there is a objective people want to achieve, and that is why at the cost of common people, normal people who live in Ukraine in different cities like Odessa, Kiev and other cities, this battle has been fought, and all the media across the world is basically broadcasting it and also increasing their TRPs. This new whole process of creating a new world order globally really started 2 years back with the pandemic. Now, it is debatable whether this pandemic was a natural pandemic or it was a man-made pandemic. I think there is a lot of debate on that. Nobody has a conclusive answer. But one thing is for sure, this pandemic changed many things. A lot of countries were doing their own normal work as it was. They were progressing. There were a lot of economic things being taken care all over the world, and all countries were progressing. And suddenly this pandemic happened. Because of that, there was an instant stop of whatever people were doing. There was lockdown, and this lockdown actually created a crisis situation in terms of economy. And this pandemic itself changed a lot of things what people were doing earlier, and the way we actually do things have changed because of this pandemic. So pandemic is a part of this sequence of event which will help create the new world order. And as you know that the previous world order, United States was a world power, and competing with the US was the Russian Federation or USSR. USSR crumbled in between, but the power remained. So there were two power centers, which is US. All the Western allies were following US, and all the Eastern European allies were following Russia. Whereas India and small other countries remained non-aligned because India was developing, and China became a supply chain agent in the past 30-40 years of the world. And that was the order, and then the whole change now is rapidly happening now after the pandemic. So that is why the pandemic was a turning point. Because of lockdown, people have to change their business practices and also change towards digital economy, and a lot of new things have come up, which is also driving the economy now. Now, people who are driving the economy during the pandemic and post-pandemic are the businesses who could cope up with this change. And when I say that businesses, these are the businesses which were initially supplying all the medical equipment and masks, etc., but later on gradually got involved in other activities, and that is why the economy is also being driven by few, and that is a major change across the world, and it really started with pandemic. There are certain countries which are always on war virtually, and when I say virtually, it is the cyber warfare. If you look at large countries like US, India, China, they are always at war. The Indian government agencies are always under threat, and they have to move ahead to prevent this threat which is happening. So imagine a situation where an enemy country is able to infiltrate websites and various services which is provided by the government to the citizens, and hack into those databases and prevent citizens of that country to use certain benefits. It is a cyber war. That means you are ensuring that the government benefits does not reach the needy, and therefore you can also steal the data. In fact, the personal data has been used to benefit various business houses like Amazon, etc., even Facebook. So the customer behavior can be manipulated, elections can be manipulated. So these are all the cyber war, the elements of cyber war, which are very, very important. Now look at the Ukraine crisis. Now 3 days back, the Russian hackers were hacking the Ukrainian websites. Probably 100 government websites were hacked into. And today's news is that the world hackers, which are unknown, are now hacking the Russian government agencies. So, Ukraine crisis, while we see that there is a lot of crisis on the ground when the battles are brewing and certain collateral damages are also happening, but there is a bigger war happening in the cyberspace where they are hacking each other's websites. So who's trying to hack who's trying to attack? Because if the Russians government agencies websites are hacked, that means they are literally on war and they have been attacked into. So this whole cyber war, pandemic, Ukraine crisis are the stepping stone, and it's a move towards becoming a non-sovereign state of the world. Because so far for last 60-70 years there was sovereignty which was ensured by United Nations. Now this invasion of Ukraine shows that Russia doesn't care about United Nations. Russia cares about their own interest, and in their own interest, they have invaded a sovereign country. And then there are other agencies who are now invading the Russian sovereignty. So this is a war against sovereignty, which will eventually emerge, maybe after 1 year or 2 years, into a new world order, maybe a new form of United Nations. Who knows? The outcome of the Ukraine crisis would be the disruption of global supply chain. And when I say global supply chain, there is a global supply chain that is we are living in. I mean, nobody can say that, hey, I'm independent, because something happens in the world, it impacts the entire world. Now, if you look at the Asia, Southeast Asia, where India is, India may be very badly affected by this disruption of the supply chain, because India is a very large country with large population, and we still depend on the oil-based economy. We need oil and gas imported from other countries for our consumption, for our well-being. We have set up a very good target of transferring all vehicles into electric mode, but that work is going on. It's a gradual process, but until 100% transition happens, we are still dependent very heavily on the oil and gas which is imported from other countries. So the first casualty of this war would be disruption in the supply chain, and then when that disruption happens, it will impact the all other associated supply chain, which may result in shortages of commodities also, and when the shortage happens, the cost goes up. So I think large countries like India, China, maybe to some extent, and Thailand and other countries may be affected because of this disruption which is now being caused by the Ukraine crisis. So I call this as a disruption because the effect of this will be visible only in month of late March or April, where things start to increase. Things will start to, the Indian population start feeling the brunt of the disruption in the supply chain. It may also result in some corrective measures taken by the government of India, where government of India would like to reduce their dependency. In fact, all the strategies which are being implemented by government of India so far is basically to become self-reliant, and that is the key point. We have to become self-reliant in order to survive this disruption which is being created first by pandemic, now by Ukraine crisis. As a fallout, the China will emerge as a biggest beneficiary of all this, because China is also a large country like India, in fact much bigger in terms of population and landmass. They will start buying the natural resources from Russia, because if the Western countries sanction Russia, do not buy their gas, China is a natural partner. They will start buying the natural resources from Russia, and Russia, if you know, is an independent country. They are self-dependent since 2014. They don't need anything from any other country. So this sanction does not mean anything for Russia, but China would definitely emerge and resolve their energy issues by supplementing buying the oil from Russia and also gas from Russia, and they will start fortifying their positions, and because of that, there could be a lot of new changes that we will see emerging in Southeast Asia and Asia Pac region. These new changes will then set the pace towards establishing a new world order. And it is very evident because two large countries in this world order are the Asian countries, which is China and India. China and India must resolve their issues and become part of this particular world order, which is now emerging. And when I say that the new world order is emerging, it is the new scheme of things, new form of United Nations. Who will have the veto power? Who will do what? Who is the superpower? Who has the best manufacturing? Who owns the supply chain? Who is able to collect taxes for their produce? Who is able to get more business into their country? So I think this is where the new world order is going, and is definitely moving away from the Western countries, is definitely moving away from the current form of United Nations. And this is where the whole crux of the matter lies. Why Russia will invade Ukraine? They are their own people. They have the same lineage. They have invaded because they want to create a new situation. They want to definitely work towards a new world order. They definitely want towards creating a new ecosystem. And this is what it is. This is where it is happening. It is very evident that in United Nations Security Council, the China and India both decided to abstain the proceedings against Russia. So this itself shows what is going on here. The new world order is being talked about. Every country wants it. They are proceeding towards it, and in between there is a collateral damage which is being seen in Ukraine. So I think this is where it is going. This new world order is emerging for sure. It is changing the world as we know it. The old habits, old ways of doing things will be thing of the past. And it may take 1 year, it may take 2 years, but we know for sure that it is changing for good. And now let's talk about survival. The countries who will be able to survive this depends on the activities they indulge in. And when I say survival, it is also about the maintaining sovereignty. So when we say that the countries are sovereign, that means as of today, if we have a boundary, international borders, we will survive as one country and move into the next world order. And for survival, I would like to classify that the countries who will survive this onslaught or this turmoil will be the countries who will be able to create these three pillars. And these three pillars namely are, first is the non-dependency on the natural oil and gas based energy. So countries who are able to create a unconventional energy environment very rapidly, very quickly and very efficiently will basically not depend on the oil economy and will be able to survive, because then they will not be affected by the global turmoil which is going on right now. And that is the key to success. Number one point, we as a country should develop more unconventional method of generating our power. Number two is the internal economy. The internal economy should be more robust. That means we produce things and we consume things. So if there are more dependencies on export oriented economy, then definitely their life cycle will get choked after some time. So if there is a country which is able to not only produce high-tech equipment but also consume internally, is the key to success. That means you not only do a lot of R&D within the country, you also consume that equipment which has come out after a robust R&D. And number three is the world-class health institutions. So if you are able to create a situation where you are able to create a world-class health organizations like hospitals, clinics, nursing homes for their citizens, they will be able to cope up with the pandemic related issues and also any future pandemic which may affect the world. So these are the three pillars. In fact, all countries now must focus on building these three pillars if they want to survive after this turmoil, which is now, lurking over the horizon across the world. So these three things are very, very important. All countries must develop these three things to start with. That means, to repeat, uh, move away from oil-based economy and move away from export oriented businesses. Start consuming, start developing your local market so that you produce things and consume locally. Number three, have the world class health facilities for their citizens. Friends, my name is Chandrakant from Akulmac. If you agree with these points about the New World Order, send in your comments or suggestions. Even if you don't agree, still send in your suggestions and comments. And for today, I like to say goodbye, only to catch you again in the next one.